Hi guys, it's Karen with Love Your Land, and I'm out here this morning. It's a little chilly, which is why I'm wearing a sweater. I think this is the first time I've worn a sweater in my garden since about April. But anyway, I'm out here because this is the time of year in northern Colorado where we get these big, wide 30 to 40 degree temperature swings. And so in the morning it's pretty chilly. I think it's about 50 degrees right now. And then it warms up to 70 or 80 degrees. But in the morning when it's cool, I'm safe. Now what I mean by that is once it warms up, once the sun gets more over here, the wasps converge on this bed. And I know it's because there's plants, but it's also because of this wood. And an exterminator friend of mine told me years ago that wasps love wood. There's some protein in it or something. And so anyway, those of you who know me know that if there are wasps present, I will run and scream and freak out and knock over my tripod. Yeah, so we don't want that to happen, at least not on camera. Enough of you have seen it in person and it's just mortifying. Anyway, I brought you out here to show you my Swiss chard and talk about it a little bit. Here's why I love Swiss chard. I direct sow Swiss chard seeds right into the dirt in the spring, and they come up and they grow. See, it's warming up. Something's flying overhead. Anyway, it comes up in the spring. It grows right through the heat of the summer, and it does fine in the fall. It has no problem with fall whatsoever, at least not in my area. Unlike lettuce, I'm sure you all know if you've grown lettuce, it looks great, it's growing, and you're like, yay, let's have salad. And you go out there and you grab a bunch and you bring it, and you're like, what is this white goo? And that's like the lettuce that even the dogs won't eat. So that's a big bummer when you've been, watching this beautiful lettuce grow. Swiss chard doesn't do that. Swiss chard is your friend. At least in my experience, I have not had one speck of white goo come out of a stem of a Swiss chard leaf. It will flower, and there are some flowering stems over here, and I'll do a close-up of that so you can see them. And I actually let a couple of the flowers just flower, and then eventually the seeds will pop out and they'll drop off and they go into the soil, and then in the spring, before I even get out here plant anything, probably I'm going to have Swiss chard popping up, and that is a cool thing. But like I said, it doesn't bolt. So, I've already harvested this row. I don't know, I think this is going to be my 4th time, and it's perfect. You can't see that, but there is no white goo. I wouldn't be doing this if there was. I would just pull it all out and throw it in the trash. Compost bin, I mean. Anyway, so what I thought I'd do is harvest this and bring you inside. And for those of you growing Swiss chard, it's very prolific, and sometimes you have to get kind of creative with what you're going to do with it because you don't want to waste it. And if you don't have chickens, I don't have chickens. If you get too much, you're kind of like, eh. But the great thing is you can eat it fresh. I wouldn't eat too much of it fresh unless you don't mind having TMJ. It's pretty hearty. But you can also stir fry it. You can, it freezes really well. Those are the couple of things I'm going to do today. So anyway, let's get to it. I'm going to harvest this, and then we'll go inside and I'll show you what I do with it. So one thing I will tell you also, oh look, a ladybug. Hey, when I am harvesting my Swiss chard, whoops, find another one. There's this big spider over here, so that's why I'm reaching way over, kind of leaving this alone because he was big and hairy. And there's something behind me. It's probably a bunny. I'm all freaking out. Anyway, when I harvest, I just use regular kitchen scissors and cut it off. I do inspect each leaf because, at least in this bed, pincher bugs love this stuff. So I don't mind if they have a little snack. I just don't want to have them as guests in my home. And you harvest it and you bring it in and you put it in the sink and you're washing it off, and all of a sudden pincher bugs are crawling out of your sink, and it's like a horror movie to me. Can't handle it. So I would recommend checking your leaves. They're big enough and open enough, it's not a big deal. But anyway, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna harvest this, and then we'll go inside, and like I promised, we will do something with it, and hopefully give you guys some ideas on what to do with yours. All right? All right. I cut the ladybug leaf off. Whoopsie. Well, you just go over here. Hang out. Oh, she's stuck on there. Okay. I'm just gonna leave that right there. Let her hang out. She's eating something good. Okay. Okay, I've harvested my Swiss chard. I have a whole sink full of it that I've already rinsed and cleaned and made sure it was free of pincher bugs. But I brought a little over here just to show you what I do to prepare it for blanching. That's the first thing I'm going to do with it, is blanch it. Basically, you just cut it right off at the leaf end, at the stem. Don't throw the stems away. Those can be used in stir fries and soups and all kinds of stuff, full of nutrition. They don't need to be blanched. Just set them aside, and we'll deal with those in a minute. I also do not cut up my Swiss chard. It breaks down really fast, just like spinach or anything else. And so if it's chopped up in little bits, it just kind of is a big pile of mush. So I leave it whole, and I just go through and chop the leaves off, set the stems aside, chop the leaves off, it's hard to say that. Try it. Chop the leaves off, set the stems aside. Also, if I have a little leaf damage on this one, I don't really want to eat that. So I just cut it out. And this actually does go pretty quickly when you're not filming yourself. But you just cut those little bits out and set them aside. And into the pot it goes. So I'm going to get through the rest of about half of this because I'm going to do something else with the other half of the chard. And meanwhile, I have a pot of water boiling on the stove because that's where it's going to go. I also have some chicken cooking over there because that's what we're going to be doing next. So I'll be right back when this is done, and we'll go to the next step, okay? Okay, so I've washed and trimmed my Swiss chard. The water's boiling, so it's ready to go in. I put it in a colander because it's much easier to take out that way. So we're going to take the lid off of this very hot boiling pot of water. And this actually could have been filled up a lot more because this reduces down very quickly, just like spinach or anything else. But for the purposes of this video, just to give you an idea, I just packed it in there about 3/4 of the way, maybe 2/3. So you just plop it right into your pot of boiling water. I use a nice long wooden spoon so I don't burn myself with the steam, and just push it down in there. And then once it gets boiling again, from that point, you set the timer for 3 minutes. It's from the boiling point. So as soon as I put this into the boiling water, of course, it's going to stop boiling. And so I'm going to put the lid on to make it boil faster. And once it does, I'll set the timer for 3 minutes, and then we'll be back. Okay, so the Swiss chard has cooked for 3 minutes. It's done. We want to get it out of here as soon as possible and into an ice bath. So that's what I've already taken out of the hot boiling water, and now we're just going to take a spoon and get it right into the cold water so that we can stop the cooking. If you don't stop the cooking, it's just going to cook and cook, and you're going to have a big pile of green mush. So I just take it, make sure it's separated out, stir it around, and once it's cool, and I'm satisfied that it's stopped cooking, I will take it out of here and move on to the next step. Okay, I have cooked the Swiss chard. I have put it in an ice bath. It's stopped cooking, so now it's ready for storage. So I take a freezer bag and simply place it in there. I try and make it as flat as possible. That is a tip I got from Ray at the Praxis 55712 channel. Thank you, Ray. Because he's right, it does store a lot easier. I mean, I guess I could have figured that out myself, but I didn't. I was putting these big blobs of things in the freezer, and they're just like falling, and anyway. So you just place it in there. Again, I didn't do very much, so this is only going to do about 1/4, but that's okay. Maybe I'll have I want to make soup for myself. That's it. So get the air out of it. I saw one gal on YouTube. She zips it up, and then she puts a little straw in there and sucks the air out of it. And I actually did that one time. It worked really well, but I don't need to do that right now. There you have it. You put that in your freezer. Here's a larger one that I did a while back in August, it looks like. Pretty flat. Ray would be proud. And then I also put my stems in another freezer bag. when I get done trimming up the other part of the harvest, I'll put those in here as well, and then I'll be able to, these will come apart when you go to take them out. You can grab just a few if you want, or you can put them all in or whatever. The Swiss chard, on the other hand, is going to come out in one big ice block. So you want to probably make them in smaller bags, or just, you know, don't fill up a gallon bag, because that's going to be a lot of chard unless you want a lot of chard. So that's it. The chicken is almost done, so we're going to move on to a fun, yummy recipe now, okay? Be right back. Okay, the final part of this video on what to do with your chard is this fabulous creamy Swiss chard recipe that I'm doing kind of a spin on. You can find that if you Google creamy Swiss chard recipe. You can find it on the internet. But I'm going to actually add chicken and a couple other things that I have from my garden. Right now I have in here sauteing, I have about a quarter of a tiny little yellow onion from my garden, and then I have about 3 or 4 green onions, Tokyo green onions, again from Seed from Ray, thank you. It smells fantastic. And I also have surprise garlic in here. For those of you who don't know what surprise garlic is, it's just regular garlic, but I didn't know I had it, and I harvested it, and it was fun. So that's what we're calling it. I'm also going to put in one little jalapeno, because again, I have a lot of peppers, so my family likes things with a little kick. So we're going to just go ahead and add those in there, let them saute with the onions and garlic. And once that's done sauteing, we'll come back to it and we'll add the other ingredients, okay? We'll be right back. Okay, the onions and garlic and peppers have all sauteed enough, and so now I'm going to add the Swiss chard. I'm also going to add a little bit more olive oil because I don't want the chard to get burnt. That was a little more than I meant to, but that's okay. Don't tell anybody. So add a little more, and all that good stuff stirred around, and then I have here about 1 bunch of Swiss chard, and what I do is I cut the stems off, and then I roll it up and I cut ribbons. So they're kind of in little ribbons. They're just strips, really. But anyway, so we're going to throw that in there. And then I have about 1½ tomatoes, again from my garden. Turn that way down. We're going to add those in. That's going to add a little more liquid, cool things down a little bit, and that'll be a good thing. Except for just that. Maybe we can edit that out. So I'm going to stir these around and let the Swiss chard reduce down in my warped pan that makes noise. Sorry. And yeah, it's Teflon. Sue me. Well, please don't, actually. We're going to be phasing this out, I think, and we're going to educate ourselves a little bit better on the cast iron and go with that. I do have one cast iron Dutch oven, and I love it, but it gets a little tricky for me. I really need to just understand. I know everybody says it's so simple to use cast iron, so I'm just going to do my homework and know how to take care of it, and then we can make the move to cast iron. Anyway, we're going to let this cook down a little bit. We have it on low, medium to low, just letting that chard kind of wilt and cook down a bit. And the tomatoes are in there to kind of keep it, you know, keep some of the moisture in there and keep it from going crazy. And this doesn't take too long, so we'll just keep stirring until it's about where we want it. And then we're going to add the other things. Okay, I've sauteed this down quite a bit. It's reduced down to probably about half of what it was when I first put it in here, the Swiss chard that is. So now I'm going to add about a teaspoon of salt. That's how I measure. And about maybe a ½ teaspoon of pepper. Give that a little stir. You're not helping anymore. Go away. My pan is warped, so I have to put like a little can underneath the thing. Anyway, that probably made no sense, but I know what I'm trying to say. So we've got the onion, the 2 types of onions, the garlic, the jalapeno, the Swiss chard, the tomatoes, the salt and the pepper in here. Now, before I started, I also cooked up about 1.5 pounds of chicken, actually 1.5 pounds exactly. And I just take the chicken breasts and cook them in water and then throw them in my food processor and shred them up. So that's just pretty much plain chicken. but I'm going to go ahead and add that in. Okay, and then we're going to put in about a cup of, this is non-fat Greek yogurt. You can use sour cream, yogurt. This recipe typically calls for Parmesan cheese, but I'm kind of skipping the dairy, or I shouldn't say dairy because this is dairy, but cheese type dairy. And so I'm going to go ahead and add in this cup of yogurt. And you can add more or less of anything that I've put in here. You can just totally do this entire recipe to taste. But I am telling you what, my husband loves it, my daughter loves it, my son probably wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, but it is delicious. And that's it, you're done. So I just use chard, onions, garlic, tomatoes, and jalapenos from my garden. No, that wasn't one of my chickens because I don't have chickens. So anyway, that's it. That is how you make that. So I'm gonna get this off the stove and wrapped up, and we'll be back. We're all done. I hope I've given you guys some ideas on what you can do with your Swiss chard. It really is a fantastic thing to grow. As for me, I'm done. I have dishes to do, so I'm going to do those, but not before I have some lunch. Some of this fabulous chard chicken pepper thing that I made. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.